One. Hey guys, this is Fight Commentary Breakdance. We have here Staas. Staas is a viewer. He's originally Russian, but now he is in Wisconsin. So he's a Midwestern viewer. We've interviewed lots of viewers from Texas for some reason, but now we got Midwest. So what's up, Staas?
Thank you, Jerry, for having me. It's been a dark time for all of us,
Yeah.
but I think that one thing martial arts has taught me just in general is that really no matter how big the challenge is, there's almost like persistence is a very big factor into becoming greater than you probably thought yourself to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, but my journey with martial arts started actually not with Bruce Lee, as many of their adventures have started.
Mm-hmm.
Mine actually started with Jackie Chan. So, I think it was in the early 2000s. I saw one of his action comedies. It might have been the Drunken Master series, but um, I just remember seeing his flashy moves, but it wasn't until I got older that I realized, and I watched some of his interviews, that he uses his environment to fend off his attackers.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's actually, I can send the link later, but there's even a documentary about his choreography and how he makes makes his stunt scenes. And the Jackie Chan stunt team, I think, has been going on for 40, 50 years at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. And so you saw the Jackie Chan movies, and then was it kind of like you dove into kung fu, or what martial art did you dive into after you really got into
Uh,
Jackie Chan?
well, it wasn't until I was older that I formally trained under a master, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I could tell it was the real deal. There was sparring and sort of philosophical components to it, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I was actually in the Boy Scouts for a number of years, and we had some uh, other people from schools come and demonstrate, but
Mm-hmm.
there was the traditional board breaking and stuff like that, and it was okay, but it wasn't what I thought martial arts really involves. Like
Mm-hmm.
as Bruce Lee has said before, that boards don't hit back.
Yeah.
So yes, while it may test someone's power, it is not the only thing that you should be focused on. And I don't like it when it's when it's purely an exhibition. I kind of feel, well, you're not really teaching me anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you learned under that master. What is your martial arts journey now like? Right before, we have this crazy apocalypse going on, but before that, were you kind of still training under him? Were you training many different systems? Tell me about that.
Um, uh, I wasn't really I keep using the word formally, but it's the best thing I can do. I basically tried to see different types of martial arts, either through movies or reviews. I sadly wasn't really going to different, I guess, dojos or houses of a certain style. So,
Mm-hmm.
but of course, when I was younger, I also came across the Ip Man series, and then I learned about that. And one thing that happened to me in college, early in college, um, I contacted um, he claimed to be he was, I don't know if he was a master, but he said, I would like to, I'll show you what I can do. But he wasn't really teaching me again. I think we met only for 10 minutes, so it was very vague. And
Mm-hmm.
I think he was more of a show off kind of guy.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't really have much experience in the martial art in terms of actually training,
Mm-hmm.
but more of just seeing what other people have done through mainly film. That's the
Mm-hmm.
big medium I've been exposed to.
Nice. Nice. A very quick question about that guy who kind of showed you for like 20 minutes. What was he showing you? Was he showing you like moves? Was
I
showing you?
I think he was showing me the defense and attack simultaneously. I kind of already knew
Ah,
about that, but he um I don't know, he still wasn't explaining as to why this is effective or
mm,
how you really would use this move. It was sort of like I guess for lack of better words, it was basically a hand slapping.
okay,
But
makes sense.
yeah, but
Wow.
he was confident, and I didn't really discredit his ability. He was
Hmm.
taller, he was stronger, but it was more of just like this is like, are you doing this to? You're not really doing this to teach me. It's more of like, yeah, I know Wing Chun. What are you going to do about it? And I that's completely opposite of what martial arts should be.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Totally. So I think your gauge, your vibe of him was correct. Like he was probably more just trying to show off. So absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Um, right now, sadly, I'm isolated in my basement right now. But I think another thing, one area I wouldn't say I'm not a master. I have no formal training in this. This was also from the films, but I'm a big Star Wars fan,
Hmm.
and so I love lightsabers. That's a very might be a nerdy thing to say, but seeing how lightsaber fighting came from kendo and kenjutsu, that's really sparked my interest. And I'm a bit better with weapons than hand-to-hand combat.
Hmm.
But but yeah, and I'm also interested in the history of things,
Hmm.
craftsmanship. How were they able to make these weapons that, for the past thousands of years, have really stood the test of time?
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. Funny anecdote that I've heard. I haven't searched this up to see how much truth there is, but you know how the Song Dynasty got conquered by the Mongols, right? So a lot of the samurai stuff, the swordsmanship in Japan, that's like more authentically Chinese and more authentically Kung Fu than anything China has to offer now, because a lot of good Chinese culture, including swordsmanship, the craft of making great swords, died when the Song Dynasty got conquered by the Mongols. So it's like Japan kept a lot of the great Chinese culture from the Tang Dynasty and the Song Dynasty for many, many years. So that fact always fascinates me, and I can totally see why you love like the craftsmanship, that kind of like the history of all that.
yeah. There's I've sent this to a couple people. I like documentaries. I think it's if Hollywood is not going to portray something accurately, documentaries are the best bet. Yes,
Yeah.
and they try to make it interesting, and this definitely was.
Hmm.
It takes you through the whole process of making a modern day katana, or I guess any Japanese sword, in the traditional method. And when I mean traditional, is that it's not just folding a bunch of layers together. That happens eventually. It happens, but I forgot where it is exactly. I want to say it's in the northeastern part of Japan. There's it's sort of like a warehouse where they create a Tatar furnace, which is the very building block of the material, which they get from the local river. And this material is so pure that it's expensive. It's very expensive. Um,
Hmm.
so they get all of that material. They basically build it up. I think it usually takes around 3 days to make the mass. It looks like molten lava when the walls finally come down. And then uh, Hikara Akira, I believe his name is. He's one of the last Tatar masters in the world. He's in his 70s. And so he works for 3 days, 3 nights. They break it down, they bring it out, and then he inspects. He's looking for a silver color because that's more pure in the materials that's needed. So
Mm.
he looks at everything, and then he says this bit will go to the sword master, and the rest can be made for other metal things that are not to the standard of that master.
Mm.
So yeah, and I think the biggest thing that blew my mind is just the blade, not the not the actual putting together, assembling, but the actual blade takes around 6 months to make.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Yep.
For viewers watching, I'll put a link, just a link from Wikipedia. It brushes the surface, but if it can be a starting point for you guys to read about this stuff, but it's fascinating. Wow, this is so. How did you get into this type of like the historical, the HEMA, the weapons type of martial arts like research? What got you into it? Was it the love for lightsabers and all that, or was it even before then?
I I'd say it would be a combination of both. Lightsabers, weapons in general, have been a fascination with me, but
Hmm.
from a very early age, I also went to museums.
Hmm.
Well, I guess for me, I was more interested in the weapons and the armor than the pots and the tablets. So
Hmm.
I would see those on the wall, and then I would be thinking, oh, it's just plain metal. It's just wood. It's and they crank these things out within a few hours. It was like, no, it's once you finally learn as to what all this material was and how it was composed, it definitely takes your breath away. In fact, there's a wonderful YouTube channel called Man at Arms Reforged, and they actually made they make samurai stuff and other pieces, but they also made a Viking Ulfbert, which is their sword, and this sword, the material is made out of what is called crucible steel, and that would have made taken several months to make.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, I even this was about a year ago. I was in Seattle, Washington, and there they have an exhibition of the what are they called? The clay figurines. I forget what it's called. The thousands of clay figurines from China, and they brought those over.
Hmm.
Just
Hmm.
and what's interesting there is that no two are exactly alike.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, just museums are just seeing everything that was created from however many years ago is just it's been fascinating.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Two points to add to what you're saying about the terracotta army. Like you said, none of the faces are alike. Basically, he modeled every single face on a different person, basically a different look. The amount of care, man, when you have absolute power, right? The amount what you could get people to do for you. The other thing is, I loved museums too as a kid, and I had this thing where I grew up in Chicago partly, so I'm partly a Midwestern boy too. And one of the Chicago museums, I don't remember which one, probably the World History Museum, but I don't remember what it's called. There was a section just about knights, like a whole hallway filled with knights, their weapons and their armors. And I just remember I was always so scared, like the rows and rows of like knight armor, and like the knights are all it's like full body, right? So it literally looks like a row of like demons. And every time I walk through there, I'd be like, Dad, come on, take me through. I'm a little scared.
Yeah, they definitely have that effect. I'm a world traveler. I've been to 9 countries. I was supposed to go to Germany this summer after my graduation from college, but so travel has been suspended, which I totally understand.
Hmm.
Um, we may or may not get some of the money that we've already paid for our trip, but if people are healthy, that's really all that matters at this point.
Yep.
But even in London, England, uh, at their famous castles, they have like you get to see the crown jewels. You can see Henry VIII's armor, and he was big, and he got bigger as he got older. And it's I think it was like, I mean, of course he could afford it, and even if he couldn't, he was the king. What are you going to do?
Hmm.
They had to basically create armor probably, I'd say, every couple of years because he was so big. And just seeing the massive size there, I'm like, how could he walk around? How could he ride a horse with that?
Yeah.
But I guess somehow he did. But of course, he probably was just in the back viewing the battle, not on the front lines.
Yeah.
But
Makes sense. Makes sense. Maybe they had like a chariot or something carrying him. Yeah. If you ever go tour Yale, Yale University has a church. It's like one of the oldest churches around there. And one of the United States' former presidents, Taft, he was a Yale alum. And what happened was, I think after he was president, he still would go to that church. And Taft was like Henry VIII. He just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's a chair there, like a chair there, especially for Taft in the church. And the chair is literally 4 times the size of every other chair in the church. It's hilarious.
yeah, well, I mean, those guys, they could afford it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so funny that you're Henry VIII. I didn't even think about like the fact that armor would just have to continually get made for him because he kept growing. That's man.
Yeah.
Wow. Is there a specific period that you really love when it comes to martial arts or weapons or anything like that?
I guess, I mean, for samurai, you have the Edo period, or Edo, I think it's pronounced, but that's a big part. For Kung Fu, I guess I don't really think I have a certain period. I mean, of course, the period of Wing Chun, because, I mean, not only because of the Ip Man films and not only because of its unique style, but I think it's I like to call it's almost a graceful martial art. It's not a hard, heavy hitting, I guess, like karate or I guess even parts of a jujitsu. It's sort of like it's soft, but they focus on that center line. And I mean, I've seen your videos and I've seen those fake martial artists who they claim, and this could be real, they claim that before you strike, if you yell a certain word, that actually delivers more power. But I don't know if that's true or not.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess there's too many to claim an absolute favorite. It's more of like what is effective, what is not, and how are you going to be using it at the end of the day? Because I mean, maybe unless you're in MMA, you better not be picking fights with people just to prove something, which is what I absolutely hate about these people who claim that they're the very best.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it always sounds like an insecurity problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like if you're really good or if you're really training all the time, like what do you have to prove? Why would you just go into the ring without preparation and just fight someone? Exactly like you said, it seems to have to deal with either probably both. It's like an insecurity problem and also like a mass delusion type of thing. So it's like both.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And,
crazy.
I think I've seen a few videos about just these fake people, but I think what's almost even worse is that they have so many followers who believe in this.
Yeah.
Like it's the no touch masters. I'm like, okay, this is interesting for lack of a better sentence, but
Yeah.
it's sad because they're manipulating people who honestly may not know any better, or they just they're not in love with the actual martial art. They're in love with the idea of being a great fighter.
Yeah, exactly.
And as Bruce Lee once said, and I'm a lover of quotes. Oh, what did he say? So many things. Something about I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks one time, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
It takes work, man. That's what I was gonna say about it. I absolutely like people who really get good at martial arts. they've got like 100 injuries on them, right? Like, it really takes a lot of beating to the body. Like, I'm just a guy who likes martial arts, and I've had some crazy injuries. So like, imagine the people who are really coaches, masters, experts, man. For example, a lot of you know Coach Paris on my channel. Coach Paris has permanent tinnitus. He has permanent tinnitus. His ears ring because he's been punching the head too much, and thank goodness that's all he got off with. Other people, they have a lot of other problems because they're getting hit all the time. So it takes a lot of work. And just like you said, I can understand the love for kind of like the idea of martial arts and becoming a good fighter, but to really put work, it's not easy, and it's not for everyone either. And so, but the difference is, like, it's one thing to be like, okay, all right, that's cool. It's another thing to be like, okay, well, I'll still pretend anyways, right? So that's where I think a lot of people really partly enjoy, in like a dark humor way, the fake masters getting beat up, because it's like we can all relate to like that like turning point many of us had, where it's like we can keep going down this martial arts path, but we might get permanent brain damage or whatever, or we can kind of hold back, do what, let's say, some of us do, like look at the history, look at the news, practice a little bit, or do other things completely, or we can pretend we'll just and most of us choose the rational, kind of the genuine path, but some people go down that delusional path.
Yeah, and for me growing up, I mean, I was interested in seeing those different styles, but also, and sometimes I would try to copy Jackie Chan, or I would try to copy Bruce Lee, which I think it's all fun and games, but it's sort of like you can't basically say, oh, I watched this one film and now you're going down. It's great for a parody. It's never great for real life. Mike Tyson, he once said, like something, everybody's a fighter until they get punched in the face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everyone has a game plan until they get punched in the mouth, something like that. We're both paraphrasing, but yeah, it's crazy. Like I was blessed because like the first time I got punched in the face was like when I was 6 or 7 in a fight, and like I got a standing KO from that. And it's like once you realize that, you're like, wow, you learn very quickly, don't get punched in the face too much. But it's like that's what most people, let's say they've never been punched in the face when they were young. Imagine you're a full-size adult. Now, the mass of that fist is not like a little kid's, but it's like an adult fist going at you with much quicker acceleration, man. That there's a lot more rattling.
Yeah, there's have you ever seen, I'm sure you're familiar with Scott Adkins. Have you seen his Undisputed films?
I have not, but that's on my list, man. But keep going with that.
He not only is he's very acrobatic, like when they were filming Undisputed 2, I think like in 2004 or 5, Scott, he basically said that I had to put on 20 pounds of muscle, and I had to almost relearn all of the moves I could do when I was younger, because I had a lot of weight, much more weight on me. So, but he did it, and he's made the 4th one, I believe, in 2018 or 2019. So, yeah, and then of course, I think he once did a Q&A session, and one person asked him, "Have you ever thought about being in a film with Donnie Yen?" Well, 3 years later, we have Ip Man 4.
That's right. And Scott plays the main bad guy, right?
Yeah, and this, have you seen it?
I have not seen past the second Ip Man, so I didn't watch the 3rd one. I haven't seen the 4th one, but I have seen the fight scene he did with Scott.
Okay. All of the Ip Man films except the 4th one are on Netflix. Just so you know, but I'm glad Donnie, he said this will be the final one, because it really culminates, and it really, you cannot go past perfection. But also, what is the definition of perfection? And it's sort of like, I think it was another fake martial art video, but a master had claimed he was like a 12th Dan, which is that's not existent. And I was like, what? But I mean, and sometimes I wonder, like, is this a parody video made to look authentic, or is this people who really think this stuff is real?
Yeah. Yeah.
It, I mean, I guess pretty much if no one gets hurt from in those videos, I think it's mainly fine.
Hmm.
But I mean, there have been times when, what was it? There's an MMA fighter in China who, for the past few years, he's been exposing those fake martial
Yeah.
artists.
Yeah. Yeah. And you bring up a very interesting point, and it's something that I've even posed to viewers because there's so many bullshito videos online, and part of me feels like at least 20% of those guys are kind of doing it on purpose to get publicity, to be funny, because they know there are channels like mine that will feature them. So let's just be funny and then get featured and have a good laugh. So I just get a feeling at least 20% of the stuff we're looking at is people, they know they're being funny. And then they're like, yeah, there are people who don't get our humor and think we're being serious. I just get a feeling. So I kind of see what you mean, man. But I
Yeah.
still think there is a lot of delusion still, which is sad. But some of that we're looking at probably are just trolls. We got trolled.
Yeah, what was it? It was one of the, aside the Russian master, and that's what I'm going to call him for now.
Hmm.
Uh, Kicking a box. The one
Yeah, yeah,
person
yeah.
commented about he has started to take. He has decided that he is at the age now where he can finally destroy his true enemy, the box that he was
The
left
fuck.
in.
Exactly. Exactly.
Then
Dude,
it was
I've
go
I've
ahead.
told other people this. Sorry, I totally interrupted you, but I told other people this. But the Russian master, the reason I don't feature him anymore is because he actually tried to take down one of my videos. So I was really unhappy with that because I'm pretty critique. I'm not just like putting it up without adding anything. I'm like trying to critique them or trying to parody. So it's protected under fair use. But like I guess the Russians don't get that. So I was like, I thought we had an understanding. First of all, what I'm doing is legal. Second of all, I'm giving him a lot of publicity. So then one day it's like he tried to take down one of my funniest videos, the one where like I dubbed over his thing by singing. He tried to take that one down. I'm like, if you're gonna try to take that one is like extra level parody, right? So like I got it back, thank goodness, because it's like you appeal the takedown. But after that, it like put a real sour note in me. I'm like, dude, I thought he was better than that. I partly thought he was trolling, but I guess he really takes himself seriously.
Yeah. And then there was I don't really know what this one is called. It's the when you add vodka to Wing Chun, the Russian slappy technique or
Oh my
whatever.
goodness, yeah. Dude, funny story about them. It's awesome you're asking about this because I don't think people know about this one. They threatened to take down my videos too. They're like, oh, we're going to take down your video unless you link this. And I'm like, that's fine. I'll link it. Basically, they wanted their channel linked. But the thing is, what I was doing is very fair use too because I was like, critiquing them. But I was like, if you want a video, if you want your channel links, sure, be careful, of course people are going to come over and like criticize you, but you asked for it. So yeah, I could send it to you real quickly on their official channel if you want to watch more of their stuff. Oh man.
Yeah,
uh
I've never. This actually is my first YouTube video, so um, but I've just heard all of the different barriers that a creator may have to go through, and especially if you use someone else's content, they're
mhm.
very like it's the FBI open up situation.
Seriously, like you really have to be careful. And I think I've always been careful, but I'm like trying hard to be even more careful now, just because it's like as the channel grows, you're on more people's lists. Like YouTube will regulate you harder too. So yeah, it's all a learning experience, and thank goodness it's like this channel got somewhere before I got punished, so to speak, because I have another channel. I don't know if you watched some of my other channels, but I had another channel. I just got too controversial on it too early, so like that channel doesn't reach anyone. So, but thank goodness this channel bypassed that, and I learned to like follow YouTube's weird gray area rules and understand what they're trying to go for before this one got censored too, because it would really break my heart if this one got censored.
Yeah, and aside from martial arts, which is the main focus, but um, again with the quality and craftsmanship. Another area I'm very interested in um, is classic menswear. So outfits you would have seen men wearing probably about the 1920s through the 50s. I don't always dress like this, but it's a relaxing day and it's raining outside. So, but just seeing how much time and effort and creativity goes into a product, whether it's clothing, whether it's furniture, whether it's weapons, just it's interesting because like so many, I'm sure a lot of main masters, they will usually say, I want to pass my knowledge down to the next generation. Well, for some of these guys, your knowledge isn't even authentic. It's something you made up.
Yeah.
So, and there was even a video I once saw. It was like 25 ways to tell a McDojo from an authentic dojo, and it's like they'll have you words such as traditional, Japanese, and I'm thinking that doesn't tell me a whole lot. The best thing you can do is to go and sit in a class and see how does the master conduct himself around students? How do the students conduct themselves around their master? It's not just about a bunch of following his directions and then bowing every other move. It's like you really have to pay attention about, is this something that can work?
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes there was the video that you posted about the rear naked choke, I think it was, and I was thinking, where's the left hand?
Yeah, exactly.
Easily get out of that.
Yeah. The lady, right? The lady with the slot machine technique, that one, right? An old one, yeah.
Well, last time I did a slot machine, I lost $7.
Me too. I lost 20, so I never played slots again after that. Oh man. First of all, about the like menswear stuff, it's awesome that you mentioned that because I actually was having a conversation with another person yesterday about this. What he was saying was that he studies HEMA. He was saying that back in the old days, especially like the night class or like maybe the upper class, the people who could afford the armor, what they wore was much thicker, even underneath the armor. So like the clothes they wore were much thicker. So like even just regular knife stabs and slashes wouldn't have been as effective like against their clothing, even non-armor clothing. It was interesting he was talking about this. I was like looking at up like what the nobles and the knight class wore under their armor, and I was looking at some of the clothing. There's something called the gambeson or something like that, and I guess basically just to corroborate what the guy was saying, it looks like yes, back in the day, at least the upper class wore like more thicker types of cotton and other types of material. So it's interesting nowadays. We look at some of those like historical techniques, maybe some of those knife defense, and of course they look bullshito because some of us wear a t-shirt, right? So like a t-shirt, yes, anything can cut through it. But back in the day, maybe more layers of clothing, like a simple blade might not actually cut too much into you if it like went. It's like stuff I'd never thought about, basically.
Yeah. There's a, I don't know what the channel is called. I don't know, but it's he has a whole series about mainly medieval, what they wore, what the nobles wore, how were weapons made? Was it easy to run in a suit of armor? And there's even another channel called Shadiversity, which he's not. I believe what he says is true. Most of his stuff is analyzing medieval period, if it's realistic or not. And I think, I mean, aside from the shiny armor, I've tried to pay more close attention to those undergarments because, of course, the peasants, they wouldn't be wearing fine silk or cotton. They'd probably be like rough wool, but of course, they probably wouldn't be fighting. But the nobles, I guess some of them, they would mainly be hosted up in their castle. Or if they're on the battlefield, they would have a lot of protection. Like even they'd be several yards back from the actual fighting. But I guess part of it was sort of like it was an ornamentation. It wasn't for actual defense. And of course, as the years progressed, you see less and less of that ornamentation.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, like for him, you think of like shield emblems and stuff like that, right? It would make sense that that was ornamentation too. You're probably not going into battle with that beautifully painted shield just to get it destroyed. You know, that's probably that has a more. It's like the in the ancient Rome days with their I think they're eagles or whatever. It's like when you're not like gonna fight with that. You know, that's like an ornamentation thing you carry. I think they're the eagles, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean the Romans, they had an entirely different fighting style on their own, which is some movies like they can kind of mess it up. But what was it called, the Phalanx Move, where all the shields created sort of like a house.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, that was real. And I think I once heard like the Romans, but I forgot what the main royal guard was called, but they would look like how you see them in 300.
Oh, interesting.
They would take it very seriously. They were kind of like the samurai of their era. And I mean, some of the technology was quite ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. There was this TV series. I think it was just called Rome, but it was a TV series that if you want to see like the testudo combat of Rome portrayed well, that TV series, I'm gonna try to find it real quick. But basically, you know, the Roman testudo had this really cool thing where you know, the first line, they'd fight for a little bit, and then they would replace it with the second line, so the person would go to the back. And so like you get a break in between the fighting, and that TV show actually showed that, which was so cool. I forgot what it was called, but I'll find it later. I'll put a link and I'll send it to you too later.
Okay.
Yeah. So like you said, when you watch a lot of these like battle movies, it's really fun to nitpick and look at them because some of them are pretty bad about how they portray battle formations. In fact, I call out 99% of Chinese TV shows and movies because 99% of them, when they're showing ancient battles, it's like the dumbest stuff ever. Like there's no sense of like a line. It's like people just charge towards each other and kind of like a fish scale thing, and they just all just like bunch up and start fighting and slashing randomly. I'm like, I don't think that's how ancient battles happen in China.
Yeah, and just curious, are you a Game of Thrones fan?
I am.
Okay. You saw this 8th season, I'm guessing?
I only saw that the when they took on the White Walkers. I only saw that episode because I've heard many stories about how the last season was bad. So I'm like, I just want to see that one episode that everyone talked about that was okay. But even that episode, it was totally anti-battle logic.
Yeah, I didn't. I think that was Shadiversity did a video on that, and that's where I saw more of like what were those battle formations, because I'm always interested in like what does Hollywood or what does this medium portray versus what did actually happen.
Yeah.
And when I saw all of the differences that would have happened during medieval times, yes, it's fantasy, but as Shad said, it's a grounded, realistic fantasy, and so logic is going to apply.
Yeah.
And when I saw that they were all outside of the castle walls and there was so much space, I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah. And of course, I think it was Shadiversity that talked about it. Why'd you put the trebuchets? Why'd you put the catapults outside? Like right there, you know, put them. They should be the most shielded. They're the siege weapons. You don't put the siege weapons in front. Like,
and I will admit, it's sometimes hard to watch, even for the first time, a battle or just another a reenactment if it's not correct, and so sometimes it's just not enjoyable.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's sort of like, oh, I need to call the production company. I need to get out there and just tell them, no, 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 it should be this way, this way, this way. But hey, I don't have enough money for that.
Yeah. And the other thing, just I've done extra work sometimes on movies and TV shows, not anymore, but I used to just for fun. And I think it was which movie was it? Basically, it doesn't matter. But I met this guy who, besides trying to be an actor, because he was in the Marines or he was in one of the branches of the U.S. military. He's also a weapons consultant when they do like Hollywood movies that have to deal with weapons. And he told me, he's like, yeah, sometimes I go on there, they pay me a lot, and I feel like I'm wasting my time and they're wasting my time because they hire me to give them advice, and I give them advice, they don't even take it. So it's like Hollywood has this thing where like they'll hire the people who, like, let's say have sword fighting or gun experience, and then the people beyond there be like, no, you should hold the gun this way. No, 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 you should fight this way. And Hollywood be like, no, 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 we know better. We know better.
Yeah, it's the sacrificing the accuracy for spectacle.
Yeah, either for spectacle or for ego or for cost saving, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I still remember probably the first time I started really paying attention to like battle formations was when I saw 300. I was a junior, I think, in high school at the time. And I remember I looked up the real story, and then it just didn't make sense to me because in 300, besides the first initial wave where they like really stood in their shield wall, afterwards they just all like one-on-one would melee like all the Persians. And I was like, that just doesn't seem correct. Wouldn't you just keep with the shield wall? And then you realize, okay, yeah, that's actually what happened in real life. They just shield walled it for 3 days and kept the Persians at bay until they got betrayed from behind. But it's like, I get for the spectacle, but it's like, how would you get it so? There's got to be a way to like keep that shield wall, but like take some creative liberties there, right? I don't know, like one guy jumps out and then goes back into the shield wall or something. You don't have to like completely destroy the history.
Yeah, and it's not just the ancient times, but there's another great YouTube channel, History Buffs, where he will mainly review films, and the wonderful film Dunkirk. There was in the trailer. It's like there's 300. There are 400,000 men on this beach. Where?
Yeah, yeah.
But you really have to sometimes forget all of the history and just see for what it is, because at the end of the day, unless you have the budget, that's usually the only film or TV show or video that's going to be made about that.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said, anything is a victory, basically. If you really want to think about any coverage, it's a victory. And then just use that coverage or the lack of coverage as a stepping stone to go and explore it more.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, what is your experience with martial arts?
So I started with Kung Fu when I was in my Chicago days. So I started with Kung Fu, and it was pretty funny because my first Kung Fu teacher was pretty good. We besides doing Taolu, as they call it in Chinese, but katas is the Japanese say. Besides doing that, we did some compliance drills and stuff like that. So it's like you got to see how some of these moves would fit. Of course, it was on a compliant partner, but it's better than just practicing them in the air and thinking you can fight, right? So, but a very funny story, and it's a story I've never told before, is that I remember one time we were doing the blocking compliance drills, and I launched my punch earlier than my partner expected. I hit him straight across the ear. And so, like, I was too young to understand it back then, but I think if you want to trace my journey as a martial artist, it did click something in me. I'm like, oh, so like in real life, since he's not expecting this to be a drill, I would have socked him. So like that was one of those moments. It's like you realize, oh wow, you gotta like kind of test your stuff beyond just like partners and stuff like that. So that was my main training when I was in Chicago. I had a friend of my dad's who was doing karate, so he would teach me karate on the side. And I never really gave credit to karate in my childhood, but honestly, it was the karate that actually helped me a lot more when I started to get into a lot of fights when I moved back to China. Like I would always credit Kung Fu, but what I realized was it was actually the karate because karate is even more about compliance drills. It's the type of karate that I learned. So it's like a lot more about compliance drills than the Kung Fu I learned. So like the thing about compliance drills that they get a bad rap, right? Because we're like, yeah, you're just memorizing moves, doing dance choreography. But what compliance drills are really good at for kids, I'm probably not as good for adults, but for kids, because most kids don't know how to fight. But compliance drills, they teach you a sequence. So instead of like in a fight, you're not just or just like throwing random things. You're like, I've had it memorized. Okay, I'll kick him, I'll chop him, I'll hit him, right? So it's like you don't panic as much in a fight as a kid. Now, as an adult, try to pull a compliance drill, a bunch of sequence moves on someone, it's not going to happen. But as a kid, it saved me a lot of losses in fights because people would charge at me and then I'd go into a sequence that I practiced 100 times and it would work. Not because I was a good fighter, but because he never practiced that and he was a bad fighter. So that was my childhood, Kung Fu karate. And then I came back to the U.S. when I was 10. And that's when, unfortunately, I had this dark period where I just couldn't find the right school. You know, I'm coming back to the United States. I should have trained in jiu-jitsu. I should have trained in something else, Muay Thai. But again, I didn't know. This was 2000, right? This was before the internet's really big. So I didn't know about all these. And because my parents are Chinese, they're like, you got to stick to the Chinese thing. So I went to all these Kung Fu schools too, in fact. And all I did was get injured and not really learn anything that much. And it frustrated me for so many years. So then, like, I had all these injuries and I took a break until basically after college. And then I did a little Kempo. I did a little Muay Thai. I tried Wing Chun too. Most of my Kung Fu from my early days was not that kind of Wing Chun. So I tried a little Wing Chun. And then 2 years ago, I started doing jiu-jitsu. And then jiu-jitsu's kind of fallen off a little bit. And I was doing a little bit of boxing. And then the apocalypse hit. That's kind of like my journey. There's probably a lot more like little things to explore. But the overall theme is that. So I'm very much more classically trained or traditional martial arts trained than kind of combat sports trained. But, you know, part of the reason why I wanted to do boxing was just because I wanted to take what I learned when I was younger and then just kind of find what works and what foundations I can get out of that. So that's currently my journey. And when this apocalypse ends, I 100% will want to devote probably a year to boxing just to take all that Kung Fu and stuff I learned and like apply it in a way that's practical with the boxing foundation. And then from there, we'll see. Maybe I'll go back into jiu-jitsu or maybe I'll do some kickboxing to kind of take all the kicking I did as a kid and like turn it practical or who knows. But so that's a little bit summary of what I've done and maybe my plans for the future.
Okay.
Yeah, it's everyone has their journey, and my journey is definitely not the standard. Like it took me many years to kind of get out of the traditional mindset and embrace more combat sports more because you know in psychology there's a thing called sunk cost bias, right? You spend so many years doing one thing, you're like, oh, it's got to be worth it. I got to get something out of it. It's hard to shake yourself. Be like, okay. If you keep going down that path, you're just wasting more time. Wasting's probably too harsh a word, but you're not spending your time as efficiently. So just try other things. So I think when I started jiu-jitsu, a lot of it thanks to my roommate and co-host on this channel, Rob. He kept being like, Jerry, man, go do jiu-jitsu, and don't just go to the jiu-jitsu place near you. Like find a place that's really good, right? Part of what you were talking about earlier, like don't just go to a place out of convenience. Like actually sit in, look at the culture and everything before you decide on something. And I can't stress that enough because I lived in Philadelphia. I worked in Philadelphia for many years, and even then, when I was trying to select schools, and part of the reason I didn't find the good school is just because like I wasn't going about it the right way. Like you really have to attend more than one class and do many other things. Like really, part of me just like. And I talked about this with another audience member, another talk that I will upload soon too. Part of the problem when you start having a job and you start making money is that you're like, well, if I make a mistake, hey, I can afford it. And that's bad too for your martial arts journey, because then you pay for something and then you realize you wasted money, but you're like, I'll recover. There's just so many factors in picking a school. It's like an art in itself, a class. Like, people should take a class on how to pick a school, because I've definitely done it wrong many times, and I still feel like sometimes I'm not good at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely important. And I actually, when I did start doing karate, I don't know exactly what kind. I think it originated in Okinawa. Anyway, I didn't really sit in a class, but I knew the instructor. I knew that he was serious, and some of the stuff we learned, it was I had never seen in real life or in any other medium. So it was interesting. Some of the sparring hurt. I remember that we had those rather large gentlemen there, and he had very thick legs, and there was this move where he would try to punch your face, and then you kind of would step to the side and then sideswipe with your hand and then turn, and if this is his leg, then your palm would dig right in there. Ooh no. I had to condition my hands or find a new partner because I would not win.
Oh, I see. So you like palm his leg and you hurt your hand.
Yeah, I mean it wasn't broken, but I was definitely in pain for a few days, and I guess several martial arts definitely touch on this factor, but I guess maybe karate is definitely this is definitely up there with just their sequencing is body conditioning.
Yeah.
Like I once saw there's another channel. I apologize, I don't know the name, but you will first like start hitting your forearm on just a soft surface, then you'll move to metal, then you'll move to like a tree, and then you move to this like 95-pound sandbag.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, ow. But
yeah,
that's part of their art.
Yeah. Adding on to that, a lot of martial artists pretend this is a fork, I know, but pretend this is a rock. When they have time, when they're bored, they'll just like chip away at their knuckle, kind of creating micro fractures, just doing that for hours. And a lot of those bare knuckle arts, their front two knuckles and maybe the middle knuckle too, get so big with calluses. You literally, like, most people don't realize, even a lot of boxers, right? Because in boxing, when you're twerking, this is the most amount of power. But the problem is when you twerk, if you don't do it right, you might hit someone when you're bare knuckle, that is, you might hit someone with your pinky knuckle, and that thing can't withstand much force at all. So a lot of boxers, because they're so used to, and a lot of times when they throw hooks, they go like this, right? So a lot of boxers get this special thing called the boxer fracture, which is they end up hitting someone really hard. They'll do a lot of damage, but also break their freaking pinky knuckle.
Yeah, you definitely have to be careful. And interesting thing about boxing, I've seen some of the Rocky films and Creed. It's brutal. Definitely, you should never take it lightly, especially maybe if you already have a deficiency in your head. But when filming Ip Man 3, when Donnie and Mike were facing off, Donnie's wife was worried that he would get hurt because we all know Mike is having hundreds of pounds of force behind his punches.
Yeah.
And Donnie actually fractured one of Mike's fingers.
Yeah, so I've heard about that too. Because to film how in Wing Chun they do these like destruction things, right? I don't know if they're called destruction in Wing Chun, but I know in JKD I believe it's called destruction. But a few times in the fight scene, Donnie elbowed Mike's punches, and the thing is, in real life that wouldn't happen. Destruction drills just especially against boxers who are that fast, you can't really do them. So what they had to do is they had to make Mike kind of launch at a stationary elbow. So that's how Mike broke his hands. It's like literally because they couldn't mimic or get it on film to happen naturally. So they had to like do a close up like that. So it shows two things. One, it's like destruction drills very hard to pull off. But two, if they do work, look what happens. They actually will fracture someone's hand.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a few things with Wing Chun that I think could just make it unique and quite beautiful actually is like I said, I'm a bit better with weapons. I've done a few bit of sparring, and I've actually like with friends and such. I would used to reenact the lightsaber fights to where I could get them down to a T. Well, then when I saw Wing Chun, and especially his films, I was introduced to the wooden dummy, the butterfly knife. I think that originally they were called butterfly knives. I think they're called something else now. And the dragon pole or the 6.5 point pole. And seeing those being incorporated into their style and not seeing it almost anywhere else, I was like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I guess it's sort of, I mean, it's along with those graceful moves as opposed to the karate katas where it's so fast and hard.
Yeah.
Well, you have to be able to move.
Yeah.
It's like when you see Bruce Lee fight, even though he his style originated from Wing Chun, it became his own thing. He moves. He doesn't stand still, and I don't think a lot of people understand. Maybe at first they don't understand, but hopefully they wrap their heads around that. As you get older, and especially if you watch the UFC, they're not standing still waiting for their opponent to make a move because you may not be able to. I mean, we don't have. We can't see into the future, but it's sort of like you have to anticipate and be ready for anything.
Yeah.
Well, what if he does two moves at once, one to your head and one to your feet? What are you going to go for?
Yeah.
Because you can't. I mean, you can't grow extra arms and legs out of your body. So.
Yeah, exactly. You make a great point that we see a lot of those traditional martial arts that get beat up. They're still stuck in you can call it like the counter-striking type of like mentality. But like counter-striking doesn't mean be stationary. Exactly like you said. Counter-striking means you have to be fluid with it too, right? So a lot of those people that we're watching on camera get beat up. They're like, okay, I'm gonna be stationary. I will react to everything. Yeah, but he's not gonna play your game. Like you said, he's gonna. One kick might be a feint, and then it goes to your head. What are you gonna do? Whoa! You get knocked out.
Yeah. And then, of course, it's there's those videos where a Tai Chi or a karate challenges a boxer or an MMA fighter. Well, as soon as they get hit, they're cowering in the corner, and they're like, "Yeah, get them off of me."
Yeah.
So you have to you really have to go in with realistic expectations.
Yeah.
And I think that's with anything in life, really.
Yeah. If it's a fight, you're going to get hit, right? That's an expectation. And I think if you're not conditioning your body and you're not practicing and sparring, you tend to forget that. You're like, oh yeah, I can block, I can evade everything he's doing. And that's not really going to happen. I mean, I had a friend, one of my kung fu buddies from when I trained in America. He's not really my buddy anymore, but he was my buddy. And he did 3 kickboxing matches just to test out his kung fu. And the first match he lost because they called it like he was too timid. Like he was still stuck in the mentality of I'm gonna block everything. I'm not gonna hit at all. So he actually only took 1 hit. Like he evaded everything. He literally like didn't get hit besides that 1 time. But like he didn't do any damage on his opponent. So of course I get the judging, right? The opponent still hit him once. He didn't do any hits on I don't even think he swung 1 punch. He literally just evaded the whole time. But the problem is if you're going to fight like that, let's say in a street situation, that 1 time he got hit probably would have like done damage to him. So of course, yeah, he felt like it was a little unfair that he lost. I'm like, no, you did lose because he still hit you once and thank goodness with gloves on and you didn't hit him once. You just evaded. You just tried to do the whole thing. So you would have totally lost the fight on the street. I mean, that's debatable. Maybe on the street he would have given up. He's like, I can't. His opponent would have been like, yeah, I can't do damage to this guy. I'm gonna f off. But right. So the second time he fought, now he's a little bit more aggressive, right? And the problem is now he's like leading with his face, right? He's too aggressive. He's not defending. So it was a draw the second time he fought, but like he took way too many shots to his face, and I feel like that was part of the reason why me and him stopped being friends. He like changed after that. Too many head hits in that fight. And then the third time he fought, the guy just hooked him once because he's kung fu trained, my friend. So he like didn't really know how to deal with hooks. And the guy hooked him once to the body, immediate KO. It was like hooked him in the right spot. He went down immediately. But so that was his little fight journey. But it's so interesting, like to see a guy who's kung fu trained, who hasn't sparred that much, how kind of like the evolution of him in the ring, and how he also unfortunately didn't adapt as quickly and didn't train the right things as quickly, because by his third fight he should have known how to deal with the hook, right? But he's still stuck in the old kung fu mentality. He's not training for boxers and kickboxers and Muay Thai people.
Yeah. And what else did Bruce Lee say? Something about use what is useful, discard what is not effective, and make the style your own.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he definitely embodied that. And I mean, he actually, what's interesting is that he actually majored in philosophy, I believe, from the University of Washington.
Yeah.
And just everything that he was giving as a pointer, whether it was on the mat, in the street, or in his own house, I think that most people really took to heart. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's these crazy stories about how after a scene was filmed, like 20 guys challenged him all at once and stuff like that. But he basically was like, okay, not every time, but he was basically, okay, I will prove you wrong, not because I'm better than you, but because I just know that I am, and I kind of just want to shut you up. And in fact, I think when he was filming, what was it? When he played Kato in the Green Hornets, the TV show, there were actually gang fights that he had to be restrained from fighting them.
Wow.
Because they were filming on, I guess, someone else's turf or something. So yeah, you just really have to say, like, is this effective for me?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with changing or adapting your style, because you could be under a 90-year-old master who says you will not change my style, and if you do, you are banned from my dojo. Well, everyone's different shapes and sizes, and if something works for him but it doesn't work for you, but you can't do anything about it, then why learn from him?
Yeah, exactly. My most vivid kind of experience or a realization of this point was, so after I kind of fell off in my jiu-jitsu training, my jiu-jitsu coach was one of the best, right? Multiple world champions. I mean, he even won a Grand Slam, which means he won all the major jiu-jitsu tournaments that year at the same time. So like, I basically never questioned anything he taught. But one of my other jiu-jitsu friends is a different lineage, and he's a big, stocky Mexican, like your stereotypical Mexican build, super wide shoulders, short legs, short arms, zero neck. And like, so he put me in north-south position, which for those of you unfamiliar, he has his like head on my belly, his body's pressing on my upper body. So I tried one of those north-south defenses that my coach, who I never questioned, and it wouldn't work on this guy, because this guy's body type was something I've never trained for. So like, I literally couldn't even frame on him. And the first part of that technique is you got to frame, and then you don't push him, but you maneuver yourself out of a little bit, out of his like top pressure. And because I couldn't even frame, I couldn't even maneuver. So I was like, wow, this technique doesn't work all the time. In fact, it will never work on this type of body type. It was like one of those ones I'm like, wow, even the best of the best, the people who've tested themselves every day, sometimes their techniques are not going to work for you. It's just crazy. It was one of those epically like mind-blowing moments. And I'm like, okay, that's why you keep testing, but you also keep learning from a variety of sources, because even the best of the best, some of their techniques aren't going to work for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's, I mean, I really wish I had the experience that you've had, not just because it's real life, but it's sort of like it. Like I said, I've really only trained under one person, and I think that was only for like 6 months. So I really didn't get the whole grasp. We covered weapons, we covered the basic katas, but I didn't. I don't have any belts, which I think is okay.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
And even as an enthusiast, it's as long as you basically respect the styles, respect the history, and are just curious, I think that's totally fine.
Yeah.
In fact, one thing I like to do, I guess it's because I watch too many kung fu movies, but I still try to emulate those types of styles. And I think my favorite move of all time that I can do is the Wing Chun chain punch.
Mm-hmm.
Just seeing it, can I match my speed against Donnie Yen's?
Yeah.
Because it's a blur. He's a blur. He's so fast. He's like in his 50s now.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of my favorite films that he made was not, aside from Ip Man, was a film called Kung Fu Killer or Kung Fu Jungle.
Mm-hmm.
He faces Wang Bao Cheng, who is a different league. Like, this guy's super flexible, super acrobatic, and the movie is basically this one guy goes and kills all these other masters of a certain style, and Donnie, who is a former master, he's in prison, for his release, he will go and uncover who this person is.
Wow. This is on my Amazon Prime watch list, by the way. I'm going to watch this tonight. I'm so glad you talked about this. I have this like queued up.
Okay.
Wow, I didn't like that's so crazy. Like I was just about to watch this. Wow, okay. Thanks for recommending that. So you really like the movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's I'm a theater major.
Mm-hmm.
So not mainly into acting, mainly more of the behind the scenes stuff, but I've taken classes on acting. And I guess there was one class we had called stage movement, and it was basically moving your body to portray a certain character or to portray a certain feeling or emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed that because depending on who the person is, I can be rather shy around them. It's sort of, I don't really know much about you. But this one, and that's another reason I love martial arts, is because the body is used to express yourself.
Yeah.
So, and just finding like what works for you in a certain situation, and telling the difference was real and what is entertainment.
Yeah.
Because you see, I mean, there were some other videos, too many to name. Guys trying to be Bruce Lee with the nunchucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really great that you've studied kind of theater movement, because one thing I love to do, because I've taken certain acting classes too, we're really focused on kind of like positioning and stuff like that, is sometimes you look at fighter, whether UFC fighters or street fighters, you can tell by their body language how they're feeling. And a lot of times if they're not feeling confident, sometimes they're going to make mistakes. And a lot of times when I'm looking at stuff, I don't know why nobody else analyzes it, but I'm like, wow, if you look at the body language, that body language changed, man. Whatever the opponent is doing is having a psychological effect. Like, that's so interesting to analyze, too.
Yeah, and it's all in all, it's a process.
Yeah.
You're not going to be a black belt on the first day.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you are, I think you really need to question some things.
Yeah, exactly. And we have seen lots of videos online of like these people with black belts who like can't even throw one decent kick. And so we know it happens. So if you feel like you're at one of those martial art places, please go examine and go do some research. So that way you don't get kind of like this delusional sense of how well you can fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the one of the saddest moments I ever saw in the history of fake martial arts, it was one of your videos where the guy who, I don't know if he was a white belt, but anyway, the guy takes a kid by his arm and literally throws him on the floor. I was like,
Oh,
what are you
yeah.
doing? I can't imagine being that kid's parents, and they better not let that go. I certainly wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. If I saw that, I would pull my kid out of that immediately. I'm like, nope, you're not going to study under here anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's there was this Wing Chun teacher that I knew of where he never showed it on me, but in his first class, sometimes new students, he would show them kind of how easy it is to knock people out, and he would actually like do something or like maybe torque their jaw or something, and like give them a little bit of a KO just to show them. And although it's cool, I think that's a little irresponsible. Someone's signing up for your first Wing Chun class and you're kind of getting knocked out on the first day. I don't think that's the right way to teach. Like, show them a video, like, or something. Don't like do it on them, because you don't know what some people, right? You torque their head one way, they're never going to be the same again. You don't ever want to take that risk with people. It's so irresponsible.
Yeah. Like get one of those skulls or figures with the removable body parts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's yeah, the abuse of power. It's you just don't.
Yeah.
The world is
And
enough as it is.
exactly. And I love what you said about kind of like the different ways of training, right? That's something that it's a science, man. Some of the best martial artists, some of the best combat sports people are horrible coaches, horrible teachers. So it's almost like there's got to be some kind of course or something for people if they want to teach martial arts. They have to first take the course on how to teach people. Because like you say, like you can't have a class that's only sparring. You can't have a class that's only theory. You can't have a class that's only compliance drills. It's like you have to find the right balance, and the right balance is different for every single person. And it's just that's what makes teaching martial arts so hard.
Yeah, it's I guess it can be said almost mainly physical things, but it's sort of like and this my karate master he was very I liked his style. I like it the way he did things in his dojo. Um, some things it was sort of like I was practicing one kata and it felt like it was eternity, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
when am I gonna get to something exciting?
Yeah, yeah,
But sadly I moved, and that's the reason why I haven't and then college came forward. So maybe and it's kind of interesting that you have these dojos who sell their DVDs, but also I've seen so many videos of where it's the exact same thing online for free.
yeah, yeah.
So, yep.
And that's the beauty of kind of where the world is now with martial arts, is that so much stuff, good stuff too, bad stuff also, but good stuff is available for free. So it's like if you want to learn, it's almost like there's so much there for you to kind of check the work of whatever you're learning. All right, so it's like people really need to do their due diligence. It's like anything basically is available. Even unfortunately, stuff like how to make a weapon is available online, but like everything's available online. So if your instructor that you're paying is teaching you something that sets off a red flag, do some searches on YouTube or do some searches on Google. You'll probably find similar stuff or maybe stuff debunking it.
Yeah, but and I think this will irritate me to no end is the no touch masters. I'm like, oh, Bruce Lee is rolling over, is it literally kicking people in his grave?
Yeah, yeah,
But
everyone.
it's yeah, I mean, I don't want I don't want to challenge anybody. I never want to do that. But I would like to sit in on some of these seminars just to see what is it like? When you start manipulating people to your own advantage, that literally disgusts me.
Yeah, yeah,
So, and I mean, we all make mistakes. And I think as when we learn from those mistakes, that's when we start to grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, and I supposedly, and probably on a last note, one of the, I don't know, it's quite a bad film. I mean, the quality isn't bad. It's just the meat, so or the lack thereof, is it's not Enter the Dragon. I think it's just called Dragon. It's a Bruce Lee film. I think it was 2017. It tells the story about when Bruce Lee um, faced off against Jack Ma. Well,
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
yeah,
The one that it was from the white guy's perspective. Bruce
yeah,
Lee fought Wong Jack Man. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I
yeah,
forgot what it's called, but it might have been something like Dragon.
yeah,
Yeah, it was from a few years. Yeah, 2016.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and just seeing how supposedly the real story, and I've done quite a bit of research on this. The fight, I believe, lasted around 5 minutes,
Hmm.
5 to 10 minutes, I think. And Bruce Lee did win. And then he walked out to the main door where the building was. He sat down, and I can't remember if it was his friend, one of his students, or his wife at the time. He basically clenched his fists and said, I should have had him within a couple seconds. Why did it take me so long to beat him? And then that's again coming back to where it says, use what is useful.
Yeah.
If you find something that isn't working, put it in your Rolodex because maybe it can come back. But don't focus on that one thing and why it wasn't working. Find something that does work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sadly, that film is not very accurate. Shannon Lee, his daughter, was very disappointed. And again, with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that scene was just atrocious.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, learn from the past and adapt for the future, but live your own life.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
under any circumstances, don't manipulate people so that you can become rich from it.
Yeah. Totally, man. I think, and that's why all of us have like joy seeing those manipulators get beat up because we know how much they're just rent seeking, basically, an economics term. They're just not creating anything, but just being the middleman, so to speak, just making skimming off stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So, this was a great conversation. Stas, love to have you back.
Thank
For
you.
those of you watching Fight Commentary Breakdowns, leave your comments below and just any questions, anything you want us to do research on. I like Stas is a very thinking type of person, and I'm a very thinking type of person. So this was a great conversation. Do you have a YouTube channel or do you have any social media you want
I
me to promote?
I No, I don't. I mean, I have Facebook. I have a YouTube channel, but I don't really post anything on it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I guess just um, for the viewers watching this, if you have any questions for me, um, leave it down in the comments below. I would love to talk about anything, either martial arts or just about life in general, because I don't think a lot of us we let life walk past us, and I don't think that's how it should be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. Okay, so we can keep talking after this, but I'm gonna stop the recording now. For those of you watching, share this, and thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, thank you, Sas.
thank you.